Presentation 4 is about the third element of the marketing mix, which is place. And in this presentation, we're going to be aware of the channels of distribution and when they're used. We're going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of using one of these organisations in our channel called the wholesaler. We're going to understand about different methods of selling and discuss different methods of distributing products, which was actually covered in National 5, but we very quickly look at it here. So what is place? Place is about getting the product to the customer and where it's going to be sold. The channel of distribution is the route the product takes to get to the customer. Now, this channel of distribution, as we can see on this next slide here, can take several forms. The manufacturer, the company making the product, can sell directly to the customer or the consumer. Now, this normally happens when a product is bespoke. It's made particularly for a specific customer. The second channel here is the manufacturer, the person or the company making the product, to the retailer, which is normally the shop, then to the customer. Now, you tend to find this will happen with big companies like Morrison's, your big supermarkets, Asda, Tesco, and what will happen is the manufacturer will just sell in large amounts of bulk to these retailers because they're buying so much of the product. Because they're such a big retailer, they've normally got big distribution centres where they're buying a large amount of Coca-Cola or Heinz ketchup or whatever, that the manufacturer will sell directly to them because it's worth their while selling these in such large bulk. And then the retailer will then put these on their shelves and sell to the consumer. Our final channel is where the wholesaler is involved. This tends to be for the benefit of small shops, maybe corner shops, newsagents, little corner groceries, etc. And what will happen is the manufacturer will not deliver to these small retailers individually because they're asking for such a small amount of a product. It's not worth the manufacturer's while directly sending bottles of Coca-Cola to each and every single retail outlet. So what these guys will normally do, these retailers, is they'll go through a wholesaler. Wholesalers are places like Costco, Booker, and what happens is the manufacturer will sell in bulk to these wholesalers. The wholesalers will then break the product down into smaller items of bulk, perhaps a pallet of 24 cans of Coke, instead of lots of 24s in one big pallet. And then the retailer will be able to buy a pallet of 24 Cokes or a packet with 12 tomato ketchups in it or whatever, and then these will be put in their shelves and delivered to the consumer. So these are what we call the channel of distribution. Now, this next slide here looks at the factors that determine what distribution channel a company would choose. We spoke about this with the manufacturer straight to consumer idea here. If the product is bespoke, it would normally be sold straight from the manufacturer to the consumer. A piece of furniture, a bespoke wedding cake, a wedding dress, all of these things that are kind of what we would call job produced, if we remember back to National 5, would normally be sold straight from the manufacturer to the consumer. Some products have legal restrictions on them. So for example, there are only certain medicines that you can buy over the counter. Other medicines would have to be, you'd need to go through your doctor or whatever. So that channel of distribution would be slightly different there. The image of the product. You tend to find that if you are buying a posh handbag or piece of jewellery or whatever, you will not normally find these in wholesalers. These will tend to be sold through exclusive stores, exclusive retail outlets like Gucci or Louis Vuitton or whatever. The distribution capacity. Large companies will normally sell through wholesalers. Now, we had a chat about this in the last slide. Coca-Cola will normally sell through wholesalers because they can offload such a large amount of their product. However, if they are selling to a company like Morrison's with a big distribution centre, then they would be happy to go straight to the retailer for that reason. Another one here is finance. Companies will lose a share of profits to wholesalers. Now, what we mean by that is for every step in the channel of distribution, the company has to remember the manufacturer is going to have to charge the wholesaler a price, remembering that the wholesaler is going to have to lose a bit to the retailer, and then it goes on to the consumer. So every single time someone else is involved in the channel of distribution, they have to get a cut of the profit, which can put companies off using too many channels in their distribution. The reliability of other companies in the chain, you have to know that you're selling, perhaps if you're going through a wholesaler, does your wholesaler do your product justice? Does your product get displayed properly the way you would expect it to elsewhere? Consumer buying habits as well. Consumers can buy in bigger bulk from the manufacturer nowadays using the internet. Consumers also get cards. They can buy cards to shop with places at Costco, and they can buy some of their non-perishable items in relative amounts of bulk, so that they can do maybe one big shop every month, and then all they have to do is go for their perishable items. So consumers' buying habits have changed as well nowadays. And finally, the market. Where is the market for this product? Is your customer some distance away, in which case you might have to use other channels of distribution to get you there? Okay. Nowadays, however, quite a lot of manufacturers may sell directly through the internet to the consumer if they are perhaps at the other side of the world. This next slide here is a good YouTube video on different distribution channels, so it's worth a watch. So the methods of selling then, and we're now going to have a wee look at wholesalers, because this is quite a popular question in the SQA exam, where you're perhaps asked to discuss the use of a wholesaler. Wholesalers sell products in bulk to various outlets or retailers, so they can then sell them on to the consumer. They are able to sell their products for a lower unit price as they're selling in bulk, which reduces the handling time and the costs involved. So wholesalers will buy from the manufacturer in bulk, which means they'll get them for a cheaper price, and they will then be able to sell on to the retailer or consumer in a relative amount of bulk, which once again means they can sell them for a lower price. Retailers sell their products directly to their customers for a profit. So you're looking here at supermarkets, department stores, chain stores, little independent stores. All of these are what we call retailers, and these companies will break the product down from the wholesaler or the manufacturer so the consumer can buy one bottle of ketchup or one bottle of Coke, etc. Direct selling is a big thing nowadays through the internet. Through personal selling, for example, things like Betterware, Avon and so on, shopping channels on the TV, direct mail or mail order. These are still a big thing nowadays that customers want to be able to do. So the use of wholesalers by manufacturers. Why would manufacturers use wholesalers to distribute their products? Manufacturers sometimes label the products for the wholesalers will sometimes label the products for manufacturers, saving them time and money. If you look at frozen food manufacturers, you may find a frozen food manufacturer is actually producing for a number of different companies, and the wholesaler will take the job on then of labeling the product to save the manufacturer the job of doing that. The manufacturer is also, that means they're able to concentrate on producing the product and making a really good job of it without having to worry about the packaging and the advertising of it, etc. Wholesalers tend to have good relationships with retailers. You'll tend to find places like Costco will have the same retailers going to them all the time to purchase supplies for their shops, their corner shops, etc. And there tend to be good relationships there. Products can be delivered to a central location, which is really good as well. Manufacturers, if they're dealing with, for example, a wholesaler, they can take a bulk of products to the wholesaler, so they're not doing lots of individual journeys. They're actually selling to the wholesaler, and the wholesaler will then have the job of selling to retailers or directly to the consumer. So it can be very easy for the manufacturer to offload the products to wholesalers. And the good thing is that wholesalers will be able to let the manufacturer know, they normally work quite well together, as to what products are selling well and what products maybe have to be withdrawn from the market because they're perhaps in the decline stage. What are the issues then? The products are in the hands of the wholesaler, so manufacturers have to hope that they are promoting their products properly. So you're really putting your life in their hands, if you like. You don't know how is your product looking in their warehouse when their Costco are actually putting your product on display, and that's the thing. Wholesalers will also take, as we mentioned in the last slide, a percentage of the profit, so you've got to remember that as well. The manufacturer isn't going to get the same amount of profit here because the wholesaler's going to have to get some of it. This was just a little task that you would have done in class perhaps, and it was using the internet. You had to find out information about these different retailers. E-tailers are just companies, for example, places like Topshop, who actually have an online website. Your high street stores would be your Topshop in the high street. Supermarkets and department stores, these would be places like Debenhams and so on that sell a variety of products. And the next slide here was actually asking you about shopping online and what were the benefits and problems for you as the consumer. However, in the next slide here, it's actually covered. So what is the benefit, or what are the benefits to the consumer of using e-commerce? And e-commerce, remember, is buying online. It's convenient. Customers can shop 24 hours a day. The choice is vast because you've got so much access to so many global markets. You can often find out how many of an item is available online, which is really helpful. Prices can be compared. So if you're maybe wanting to buy a product, you can find some kind of price comparison, where you'll be able to see where you can buy it really cheaply. However, customers may have security issues using the internet and have putting their card details in, etc. You have to also be careful about fake websites. And it's a lot more hassle returning goods because you're not just returning to a store, you've got to go through the process of posting it back, etc., which can be a nuisance. And you don't see the product before you buy, so you may actually have to end up sending it back because it doesn't suit. And there's not the same option to ask questions about your product unless you were buying it in a store like going to Curry's PC World. You can ask questions about your laptop before you buy it. You've not got that same option. E-commerce for the organisation then, what are the advantages for the selling company? You don't have to have expensive retail outlets. Quite a lot of them do, but you'll have your places like Boohoo, ASOS, Pretty Little Thing. A lot of these online fashion stores don't have expensive retail outlets. That means they can keep their prices down. Setting up a website is fairly inexpensive. I have to say maintaining it is quite difficult. And quite a lot of hard work because you've constantly got to make sure you're updating prices, new products that are no longer on there, so it can be a bit of a nuisance. E-commerce is also good for collecting market research information. You've got a really good idea of who's buying what, which is great. And because you can sell worldwide, it's increasing company sales opportunities. Just what I said there earlier on, it's really expensive and time consuming having your entire range constantly updated online, which can be a nuisance. And you've got the issue of dealing with all these returns that customers are maybe not happy with because they've not been able to try the product on or see the product face to face. And you don't have the face to face contact with customers that could be missed as well. The methods of physical distribution was covered at National 5, so this is really something that we didn't really cover much in class because we had done it already, and it's how the product is transferred from the manufacturer to the consumer. We've got road, we've got air, we've got sea, and we've got rail, and the advantages and disadvantages of these have to be known. Would you be asked a question at higher? Possibly not, but I think it's worth your while actually having this. This is more a National 5 question, but you should always be prepared. Remember, going by road is one of the cheapest methods to travel. Your customers can have their product delivered to their door. However, the carbon emissions thing doesn't make it very environmentally friendly, and delivery times can be impeded due to delays or roadworks or whatever. As far as rail is concerned, rail transports large items easily by freight. That's really good for things like iron and coal, and that's how a lot of these products are transported. It's more environmentally friendly than it is using road. However, rail links can cause deliveries to be restrictive, bearing in mind it's not a door-to-door service, and you are sometimes on railways where passenger trains are as well, so it can be a bit restrictive, and which means your rail services can be disrupted just the same way. And as I said already, your products are not delivered door-to-door. What about air? Air, it means that products can be transported across the globe quickly. However, it's expensive and more difficult to transport larger items using this method. And the service, once again, is not door to door, so some form of transport would have to meet your aeroplane when it arrives at an airport. And finally, with sea, large products can be transported worldwide. It's very, very good for transporting things like cars, etc., across the world. It does take a long time, and once again, the products will get to the port and you will then have to transfer them through a transporter or whatever to where it's going. Like the rest of the PowerPoints, for the 4 main Ps, we are asking how changing one element, in this case place, is going to affect the other elements of the marketing mix, and this will be discussed in class as a winner when we do everything, all the 4 main Ps. So how does place affect product, price and promotion by changing place? Thank you very much.